Now Penix Stadium in Iowa City. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio, of course, coming to you here from the field at Penix Stadium as Indiana takes an unbelievable loss here today, a 28-point loss, losing to the Iowa Hawkeyes, 31-6. The final score. That is something that no one expected. A lot of Hawkeye fans expected to win, as they should always. But I can promise you, this is not the game that this should have been. Indiana did not perform. Iowa performed at a very high level. They executed. They played just well on both sides of the ball. They didn't make mistakes. Was the biggest thing. Their defense played pretty good. But their secondary was unbelievable. Get rid of that. They had a great secondary. We knew that coming in. Is Josh Schibach, a big Iowa fan. Man, Iowa whooped Indiana. Let's just say that. Indiana got whooped here today. Michael Penix looked unsure of himself, let's say. The offense did not have any cohesiveness to it. The defense struggled. They didn't play badly, but they did not play great. They did not get pressure on the quarterback. The secondary was very loose. Petrus is a decent quarterback, but Indiana made him look a lot better today than he really is. But you got to give Iowa the credit. They played well. They executed. And that's what it came down to. Iowa executed in every facet of the game, offensively and defensively, and they just didn't make mistakes. Indiana's got a lot to go back and work on. Michael Penix was lifted after 3 quarters. We talked about that in the postgame with Tom Allen. That was more of it was not a big deal. But I'd said, I was tweeting out during the game, man, even at halftime, I thought that there may have been a time for a change then because it just wasn't working. Not because you need to replace him. He's the starting quarterback. But sometimes it's just not your day, and today was certainly not Michael Penix's day, and I think they should have lifted him at halftime and just given Tuttle a little just giving him a shot in there. He's played more recently than Michael Penix had, so who knows. But at the end of the day, they did not execute on either side of the ball. They've got a lot to work on. Very disappointing for Indiana. This 28-point loss, it's the worst opener since 2017 to Ohio State. Number 2 Ohio State, they lost 49-21. Then you've got to go back into the 50s. So this is not the way Indiana wanted to start the season out. Not only do you lose, but you lose a conference game. Very, very tough. They get to come home again next week against Idaho and hopefully regroup and get things back together. But this offense is certainly not there yet. Man, a lot of questions in the offseason about Michael Penix. His health wasn't an issue today, but there was definitely a time when he threw his 3rd interception that's when I questioned, is he afraid to be out there? Not afraid to be out there, but he's afraid to do certain things because he had some clear, wide open running field that closed just a little bit, but then it seemed like he panicked, forced a pass to someone who was covered and not very far away. So I don't know what it was, but it's just a comfort level that I'm not sure is just quite there yet, and that's understandable. He's had to end each of his seasons here with season-ending injury. So hopefully he can get that straightened out. But 232 yards, I think, on the day, 156 for Indiana through the air, 76 on the ground. Penalties, another issue. Caleb Jones, 3 offensive penalties on him, 2 procedure calls and a critical holding call. And Indiana was kind of already down and deep in their own territory, and it buried them even more. So they've just made a lot of mistakes, unnecessary mistakes. I'll be honest with you, I was really shocked to see Indiana play this poorly because Tom Allen has just harped and harped and harped, and this is a core team coming back. So these guys, I was beyond surprised to see how they played. It wasn't that they had a lack of fire, but they just didn't seem ready to get the job done, and they certainly did not get that job done. But Michael Penix on the day, 14-29 for 156 yards, 3 interceptions. That's a career high for him, by the way. The lone bright spot for the Indiana offense today, I think, was Stephen Carr. He only had 57 yards rushing, but on 19 carries. It ended up being 3 yards a carry at the end. Early on, he was getting 5-yard chunks. I think his first 5 carries, he had 25 yards. So he had half of his yardage today on his first 5 carries. And then so the next 14 carries, he doesn't do quite as well. But Petrus, 13 of 27 for 145 yards. All he did was manage the offense. He didn't make any mistakes. He didn't throw any picks, but he didn't have pressure on him. Indiana did not get pressure on him whatsoever, and that allowed him just to sit back and be comfortable. And Indiana's secondary was not exactly very tight today. They have got to tighten that up. There was too many receivers that had a large cushion, allowing him not to have a big day, but a comfortable day. Petrus is not a quarterback that's going to kill you through the air. But if you let him sit back there and just throw balls, he's going to get 156 yards. He's going to manage the offense. And they've got a great running back. And actually, they had 2 that give him some great production today. But Goodson, 99 yards on 19 carries. That's 5 yards a carry, folks, 5.2 to be exact. But also Kelly Martin had 44 yards on just 8 carries for another 5-yard average. So running the ball was good for Iowa today, and they ran a manageable passing game. Their defense did the rest, just did not allow Indiana to break out and get into anything. John, I'll let you manage the comments there, or any comments or questions that are popping up. Pete says, still a question is the O-line. O-line had a lot of penalties, just a rough start. Only one game, not going up. Yeah, you're right. But the thing that bothers me is those were experienced guys. They're not rookies. And Caleb Jones especially. That was probably one of the worst games he's played. He had 3 penalties, and those procedure 5-yard penalties, they really cut your momentum, man. And then and then Indiana gets roughing the passer and unnecessary roughness and holding, I think, on a single play. And that was on offense. Indiana was all offense when they got called for unnecessary roughness. Not smart. You had another play where Iowa is about done. Petrus has to get rid of the ball under pressure. Then Indiana gets called for unnecessary roughness, and that was a 60-year guy that made that mistake. A lot of mistakes by guys that you don't expect to be making those mistakes today. That was the thing that I think really bothered a lot of people. I got to get my glasses so I can start seeing these things. I can't read that far away, folks. Sorry. Jennifer says, it is the first game on the road. It's a tough environment. Absolutely. They all need to breathe and settle down. I promise you, yes. It's not like they lost to Ball State in this situation. They didn't lose a non-con game. They lost to a very good team, a team that probably should have won the Big Ten West last year. They lost their first 2 games of the season by a combined 5 points and went on to finish behind Northwestern. But this is a good team. Iowa. They're only going to get better, but they're already very, very sound. That is a big deal, being sound and not making mistakes. Whit Massey's game, it's only one game, but that was embarrassing. You can't sugarcoat it. Nope, and I usually don't. Not going to. I don't think there's any excuse to play this poorly. There's no excuse when you have that many veterans returning. You've got 7 starters on defense and 9 on offense. Not many teams get that luxury. So to have that kind of experience coming back and losing is one thing, but how they lost today was another. They just were not in this game. 31-6. They're down 14-0 before you go to the refrigerator. I think were we 5 minutes into the game and they were down 14-0. A breakdown on coverage on the right side allowed that big touchdown run to go. Then a pick 6. So absolutely not the way you could start. Mark says game was won before the kickoff, and in the trenches, Iowa did exactly what they needed to do, and they won that war in the trenches. You're right, Mark. They outplayed. Indiana could get no pressure on the quarterback, like I said. So the offensive line of Iowa did a great job. No sacks for Indiana that I can recall. They did get 2 takeaways, but those were giveaways, really. There were fumbles by Iowa. No interceptions by Indiana today. But Iowa, the team that has led the FBS in interceptions for the last 3 or 4 years, picked off Michael Penix 3 times. Now, I'm not going to give a lot of credit to Iowa for that, other than They were ball hawking and in the right spot at the right time a lot. Michael Penix was just off. He really was throwing up some turkey legs for those guys today. So hopefully that nervousness or whatever it is that he has, he gets over that. Josh Shumack from Iowa. The kickers were a factor today as well. Indiana punting killed their field position all day long. They had one great punt, but I think he outkicked his coverage, and so they ended up getting a nice run back. They had a bad punt. You're right, Josh. That was a 37-yard punt that just couldn't get him out. New punter. Indiana this year, they were used to having Hayden Whitehead, who has done a tremendous job for them over the last few seasons. They don't have him this year. Special teams, not an area where Indiana exceeded today. And that's some place where they have really prided themselves on here and using that because they're a team that has to do everything they can to win. They can't rely on being bigger and better than a lot of teams. So Indiana has got to get that shored up as well. They found out a lot of things that they need to do. Unfortunately, which is what you always want to do, but hopefully you can do that on the winning side is what you hope for. Doug reaching out from Australia. Penix is not the player we knew previously. I disagree with that. Is a QB starting spot challenge going to come into focus in the coming weeks? I absolutely don't believe that. I think he's got to get back. Man, he's went through a lot. He's had all summer, but he's just now getting back. He's not been able to compete at 100% level until now. He just got released, and so it's going to take him a minute. But he didn't lose his talent. He didn't lose his arm. He's hoped that he can get his confidence back. He just needs confidence. He needs to be confident in himself, not in his abilities, but that he's not going to get hurt. I don't know that that's not sticking in the back of his mind, like I talked about earlier with that interception where he had wide open green to run and he at the last second decided to pull it down and try to force a pass. He just seemed a little hesitant, and that's totally understandable. But Doug, no, I don't think that that's going to be an issue. I don't think that there's going to be a quarterback issue this season for Indiana, but we'll see. You can't. The only reason he came out at the end of the game was there's no reason to leave him in there at the risk of getting hurt. The game was out of hand then. Forrest says Penix and Tuttle were horrible. I think Penix has lost all confidence, not talent, but confidence. He's definitely lost some confidence, but I don't think it's in his abilities. It's in having to run and having to the fear of getting hurt. I mean, you got to say it. When you have 3 straight seasons that are ended by an injury and this is your first game back, something that hadn't been talked about, didn't get talked about in the post-game press conference. I meant to ask it and I didn't get another chance at the end there, but this is the first time that Indiana's played in front of a crowd in 2 years as well. And they had to open up on the road, 70,000 great Iowa fans, but they made themselves known here. It was a loud and raucous environment. They were having fun. I don't know that it seemed to play a part in any of Indiana's issues. I don't know if it added to any of the nervousness because they hadn't been there for 2 years. I'll ask that question on Monday at the regular. I don't know if they're having a press conference on Monday. I forgot it's a holiday, but if they are, I'll ask it then. But we'll have to do that then. Ross. Hey, Jim, it's not over yet. I was thinking McCulley might see some minutes at the end. Be safe coming home. Thank you very much. No, McCulley's third string. Jack Tuttle, Tom Allen was asked about that. And again, it was just procedural. No point keeping Michael Penix in the game at that time. And Jack needs to play. He needs to get some reps. So, because you never know. And that was the time to do that. Over and under 7-5. Well, that is a great spot. We'll do with that. We'll do that on Monday on the show for us. But that's a good one to bring up because I thought that they could go 9-3, but 8-4 would be their worst. It's a long season, guys. They didn't lose, like I said, to Ball State. They lost to number 18 Iowa at home. And you'll see an Iowa team play Iowa State next week. They're going to be in a top 10 matchup probably. So we'll see what that's like. Doug, again, the fear of getting hurt, that is exactly where he was going with Penix. He was throwing early where previously he would have taken off running. No, he didn't do a lot of running before, but it's just, I think it's something that's just in his mind. It's not about the running. It's just about getting hurt. I think he's just going to have to get over that. And, but again, I'm just guessing at that. He didn't say that. But there were just, it looked like there was some apprehension. It's just rust. And it's a lot of rust. Like I said, he's not played in a game in a while. So the first one and your first games are usually not road conference games. You usually get a little bit of break in. Unfortunately, they did not get to do that. So hopefully he can get that worked out. But Indiana does lose here today on the road, just a surprising fashion. I mean, if you would have told me that Indiana would not score a touchdown, that this offense would not score a touchdown, probably would have put some money on that. I would have. I didn't bet the game, but had I bet the game, I would have taken Indiana for certain. And from what I had seen from Indiana leading up to this, and man, they have a long way to go. Well, not a long way to go, but they've gotten some things they've got to straighten out. Luckily, they have an Idaho team coming in next week that should allow them to do that, because the week after that, it gets back to heavy business when Cincinnati comes to town. And don't think that Cincinnati not going to see this game and be licking their chops thinking they can go to Bloomington and steal a big-time win against a big-time Big Ten opponent. That's something that Cincinnati does not have on their resume. They've been getting a lot of flack and grief the last couple of years, being good but not having a win over somebody. If they can go to Bloomington to get a win, they know that that will be a mark that they need. Indiana needs to get things going so they can get ready for that game. See any other? That's about it on the comments, I think. But man, it was just a disappointing game for Indiana. It just started out and never changed. There was never a point to where you saw Indiana like rising up. Really, they just never got off the couch. It was just a little odd sitting up there, because in the press box you're waiting. You're like, all right, you're waiting for something to get going, and it just never did. You're waiting for the defense to make a big play, to get the cause a fumble up and get some yards, an INT, and take it back 20, 30 yards, something of excitement. Just didn't happen today. And it's just not something you can lament all day long about. It's a game Indiana lost. They lost to a team that was better than them today, for certain. They were outplayed by Iowa, and Iowa is going to be a team. Iowa probably will win the Big Ten West, as Northwestern is way down. Who's going to challenge them besides Wisconsin? I think Wisconsin ended up losing to Penn State today, so Iowa already in the lead in the Big Ten West. They're very happy. They get to start off with a win, and that puts them in the driver's seat, because Wisconsin, with that loss today, big for the Hawkeyes in that regard. Indiana starting off with a loss as well. They come back next week, like I said. We'll be there to cover that, and we'll be back on Monday, of course, with Indiana Sports Beat Radio, so make sure you check us out then. But after the game, Michael Penix, we talked to him about this game. John, what do you got for me?
Yeah, I felt pretty good. I was pretty confident, going into the game. Obviously, like you said, it didn't end how we wanted it to, but we got a lot to build on and got a lot to go back to work on. So I know for sure we're definitely gonna pick it up.
Michael Penix talking to us after the game. Highly, obviously disappointed in his play. I know that they'll be talking about that. I saw a lot of comments on Twitter about the play calling, but I don't know that their play calling was really an issue. They just didn't execute, guys. They didn't do the things they were supposed to do, needed to do. They made mistakes that they didn't need to be making to make themselves work worse. And defensively, you got a new defensive coordinator. And I wonder if there was some not disconnect, but with a new defensive coordinator that had not worked on this system before. Usually a defensive coordinator brings his system in. He had to adapt to this system. So makes you wonder, where are they on that? Because there was obviously a lot. The secondary, like I said, very loose. too many receivers running with 5-yard cushions, no pressure on the ball. I didn't even remember a lot of blitzing. So not a lot, just a very stagnant defense today. And I guess that's the best that you can say about it. But Doug points out on a good note that former IU baseball's Efros got his first major league win today for the Cubs. So well, good for them. There you go. But that's about it. There's just not a lot more you can say, man. Hopefully that this things get turned around. This is not a bad football team. Ryder Anderson was also talking in the post-game press conference. He's a transfer from Ole Miss. One thing he said over and over, he goes, the one thing I know is this is a good football team. He goes, we did not execute. We didn't do the things we're supposed to do. And he said he was surprised, as was everyone else. But it is a good football team. I believe it is a good football team. Again, they've got 16 returning starters on both sides of the ball. How can it not be? And they've added a lot to it. But Iowa's way too strong and physical for Indiana. Well, they were today, Brian. Brian puts that up. I don't know that they just – it was – I thought defensively it was a struggle on the line, but Iowa's offensive line held Indiana off. But Iowa, no doubt, strong in the trenches, strong secondary, strong defense, good running game, and a quarterback that manages the game. Now, if they play a defense that gets after him, Iowa's going to have some problems because he's not going to there we go. Sorry about that. Spencer Petras is not a guy that's going to win you a game through the air. He's not going to throw for 300 yards in a game. He's a manageable quarterback. He manages the game. He didn't make mistakes. You got to force him, though. You've got to put pressure on him. You got to force people to make mistakes, and that didn't happen today. But there's no sense in continuing to beat a dead horse. This game is what it is. Indiana loses on the road to Iowa in a little bit of surprising fashion. So hopefully that's a wake-up call for the Indiana Hoosiers. They go home, take on an Idaho team next week. I hope that this doesn't take a lot of steam out of the sails for the fans. The Cincinnati game is a sellout. Indiana is going to have to come back and play hard against Idaho, and show that they're a good team. Then they're going to have to come back a week later and do the same against Cincinnati. Those 2 weeks are going to make them break this. Well, the Idaho game should be a no problem to win that game. But that Cincinnati game, they cannot lose that game if they want to be competitive in the Big Ten East. Not that does not affect their standings, but you cannot start the season 1-2. I think the confidence would be eroded a little bit more if that were to happen. So there's just too many things that would come from that if you start out 1-2. But man, very disappointing in this effort today. But I know that they're going to go back and work hard. Tom Allen's guy, it was very, very disappointed, no doubt about that. I know that they wanted to come down here and make a good showing, but it didn't happen. So congratulations to the Iowa Hawkeyes as they start the season 1-0, and they're leading the Big Ten West. Indiana 0-1 now. And again, one of their worst losses in an opener. I think it tied the worst since 2017 with number 2 Ohio State. They lost 49-21, but then you got to go back to the 50s. I think there was another game they lost by the same score as they did today. Unbelievable. The offense couldn't get on the board. The field goal unit was able to do that, but no touchdowns for Indiana. And that is how it is. But thank you guys for joining us as well. We appreciate you, appreciate John, and appreciate all you guys for tuning in and listening. We'll look forward. We'll be back on Monday. We'll have all the interviews posted here in a little bit. We'll get those up from Tom Allen and everyone after the post game with that. So until Monday. Oh, it's Happy Holiday. I forgot. We're not on Monday. There will be a show. It's a semi-live show, I guess is the best way to say that. We'll have all the information from this game, but we're back live on Tuesday. I keep forgetting it's a holiday. I'm not used to having holidays off. But thanks a lot to you guys. We really appreciate you. I'm Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat, coming to you from Nile Kinnick Stadium here in Iowa City. Until Monday or Tuesday, I will see you on the radio.